about, Ian saying this, and many other people. This is part of what the truth movement is. This truth element, you see. Remember what I said, karma of untruthfulness that Steiner was saying.
Yeah.
That is the Michaelic signature of our time. To find out how the truth about our time is manipulated and spun.
Yes.
So that the forces who are seeking to work against this ego, this will to become a self-autonomous ego of man, at 21, so to speak, those forces which still see themselves, we are the shepherds, we are the patriarchs, you're not grown up yet, you need to be shepherded still, yeah? Whether it's the Vatican or whether it's the Rockefellers or whether it's the Chinese Communist Party or whether it's the Dalai Lama, any of these people, yeah, they are still shepherds and they're still working out this shepherding consciousness.
Yep.
We can see, if we use history to study, where these motivations come from, right?
Yeah.
And this does not happen. The people who poo-poo and look down on and dismiss conspiracy theories often do this, Henrik, because they don't study the history of it. They don't look at the details and the facts, and they don't go back and make a research of it, right? I'm sure you've heard that before.
Absolutely, yeah. It's
just the value of history, do you see?
Yeah.
We're often told that history is irrelevant. History causes problems and makes people fight each other. Let's not go there. Yeah?
Right.
But you see what I mean?
Yeah. But how can you learn from your mistakes if you don't know that you've made them, or try to not recognize them, right?
Of course, exactly. Yeah. So this is the point, that they try to spin. They try to spin things which are they nudge them in the wrong direction, so to speak. Like, for example, something like the United Nations, you see, or the European Union, for that matter. This is how I came into all of this about the maps and the Economist. That's right. Do you mind if I just mention one other point about the Economist?
Of course. I just wanted to ask you before that is where on the website can we read more about the maps? Where do we go in? What link?
Well, you can go to the New World Order section, for example.
Okay, very good.
The New World Order section of the
website.
Yeah, of the website, and also I've got various miscellaneous articles which don't belong to one of the major sections of the article, but you'll see that on the front page, on the home page, various miscellaneous articles at the bottom of that front page, and I go into it in those as well.
Very good. You want to mention something more about the Economist?
Yeah, that's right. Well, in the second part of my book, the book is basically in three parts. And the first looked at a map that Steiner referred to, which is from the 1890s already, which is in an English magazine called Truth. Which described how after a coming world war, Russia would become a socialist state, and would become a kind of a desert. This was in 1890, you see. Mm-hmm. And in 1893, for example, there was an Englishman by the name of C.G. Harrison who gave some lectures to the Berrien Society. That's Berean. For those of your listeners who want to look it up on the website, on the net, but you'll probably have great difficulty finding them. The Berrien Society were actually a group of Christian, what do you call it, people interested in the Bible. Mm-hmm. But this man who gave these lectures, a fascinating and very elusive figure, C.G. Harrison, very difficult to find out anything about him, but somebody who really had deep esoteric and occult knowledge. And he describes there, this is 1893, how a whole view of how the Brotherhoods of the West saw the people of the English-speaking nations. They saw themselves as the wet nurses to the Slavonic people, the Slavs, in the same way that the Roman Empire had seen themselves, the Romans and then the Catholic Church, the papacy, had seen themselves as wet nurses to the Germanic peoples. Mm-hmm. This means, Hendrik, that you have different periods of history, and this goes back to what we were saying before about the age of Aries, the age of Pisces, and the following age of Aquarius, which we are nowhere near in yet. But anyway, in each one of these ages, you have a different culture comes to the fore and plays a particularly significant role. So in the age of Aries, it was the Romans, and in the age of Pisces, it's been what you could call very loosely the Germanics. Yeah, that includes the Germans, it includes the English, includes the Scandinavians, includes the Dutch, the people of Northern Europe. Yeah,
yes.
The Germanics, and out of them, the Germanics, comes the USA. Do you see? So that's the point. The Germanics plus the USA in a certain sense. Yeah, and the North Americans. And these are the people who have a particular role to play in this epoch. But the people who have a particular role to play in the next epoch are the Slavic peoples, and especially the Russians.
All right.
Yeah, and a key goal of the New World Order. I don't know if you remember in 2002. No, sorry, 2003, early 2003, when the Iraq War was looming, and the various European countries were a bit worried about it, and Condoleezza Rice made a very, very interesting statement, which certainly Rudolf Steiner, if he was alive now, would say here is a real symptom, because certain symptoms can show you what lies under the surface. And she said, Condoleezza Rice said, we must punish the French, ignore the Germans, and forgive the Russians. Right? Punish the French. They were making the strongest criticisms of the Iraq situation.
Yeah.
We must ignore the Germans. They were also making certain criticisms, but not quite so vociferous, quite so aggressive. And we must forgive the Russians. What they mean, but what that points to, from my reading, is that we must. Everything to do with the French. The French belong, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Latin, the Mediterranean world, the Catholic world. All of that world is the past. It's the fourth epoch. That's the age of Pisces. That's gone. We must suppress that. And everything to do with that era, and any efforts it makes to keep coming up, we must push it down. And the German-speaking world, in particular, we must ignore. We must make sure that no positive or no cultural contributions come from that world, but rather only from the English-speaking world. And so this has been a really powerful motif in this age of Pisces, which started in 1413, the early 15th century, that the English-speaking world gradually comes to the fore. And first of all, you see the English-speaking world suppress the Spanish, the French, and then it suppresses its Germanic challengers, the Dutch, and then the Germans. And the English-speaking world is determined to go on, Henrik, staying in charge for the rest of this epoch.
Yes.
Then furthermore, because the New World Order, after all, is something which has emerged largely out of the English-speaking world. That this epoch, the goal, the mega goal, if you will, is to make sure that the next epoch, the age of Aquarius, in which the Slavic peoples are supposed to bring to the fore particular qualities which they have, this will not happen. That they will not be enabled to do that. And that means that Russia must be destroyed. Now, in The Economist of 1993, this is the double issue of 1992, 1993, there is a fascinating article which I go into in great detail in the third section of my book. And this article is called Looking Back from 2992, A World History, Chapter 13, The Disastrous 21st Century. That's the title of this Economist article. Yeah? So it's a kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek, and they like to do this in The Economist, slightly humorous but actually deadly serious, looking back at the 21st century from far, far in the future. But actually, Hendrik, they're not looking back from far, far in the future, because the article only really deals with the 21st century. And not only that, it only really deals with the first half of the 21st century. So they're really only looking from 1992 until about 2050 at the latest, you see.
All right.
And they're laying out what they see is going to happen between that time until 2050. And the main thing that they're putting forward here is that, as they see it, there will be an alliance between the Chinese and the Muslim countries. And the result of this alliance between the Chinese and the Muslim countries is that Russia will be destroyed.
Really?
And that Russia will lose everything east of the Urals.
I mean, because this is something that we have been seeing lately as well. You know, Putin has thrown out certain people that was backing him from the get-go. Boris Berezovsky, some of these people have been thrown out that seems to be kind of mediators for the West as well in one sense, and the relationships between the West and the East, or Russia and the U.S. have been taken back a little bit, if you will. I'm just reminded of this strange, I don't know if you recall this or not, but Hillary Clinton was over in Russia a while back. This was in March, and they gave a symbolic button to the Russians which said reset on the English translation of this, but allegedly this was a translation mistake, which is just ludicrous to me if you think about it, but it meant the word in Russian, they're supposed to be reset, but it actually was overcharged or something like that, that it was like they wanted to reset the relationship again, but it seems like the message here was that we're going to come in with force. There's going to be overcharged our relationship, if you know what I mean. Do you remember that story?
Yes, indeed, quite so. I mean, I think the thing is, you see, that the Western powers, the particularly the Anglo-American West, they're trying to break up Russia as the bridge between the West and Asia. This is the point, Henrik, that in the 21st century, what we're seeing is that these great powers, which in a certain sense, these forces of what lives on the American continent and what lives in China, and these are two forces which go way, way back in human history and right to the time of Atlantis, which I'm sure we haven't got time to go into now. But these two forces, which go right back to this very ancient time in human history, are now coming right up sort of face to face with each other in a sense. And between them is Europe and Africa.
Right.
Yeah. And the question is that these massive forces represented by the most modern element, in a sense, in historical terms, the America, and one of the most ancient forms of social civilization, the Chinese, is now coming up very powerfully against each other. The Chinese still with a very strong we culture emphasis, and the Americans with a me, myself, and I, which is the sort of what I would call the selfish ego. I mean, I don't wish to put America down. There's a lot of wonderful things happening in the States,
of course.
But there's obviously nobody would question, I think, for a moment, the fact that America has developed some of the most egocentric aspects of Western egocentrism, if you see what I mean. So you've got a very self-centered I culture and a very powerful we culture are now facing each other. Now, Europe has within itself a threefoldness, I would say, Henrik, stretching from Scandinavia through Germany through Italy, north, center, south. That central pole is a central cultural region between the west of Europe, Iberia, France, and the British Isles on the one hand, and then the Eastern Europe on the other. Yeah.
Yes.
And so there's a certain cultural and historical threefoldness in Europe, which one can also see in its religious confessions and many other things. But the point is that Europe has a threefoldness to it. So Europe has an intuitive, if it can only be conscious of it, understanding of what it means to live with a pole and a middle element, do you see?
Yes.
Yeah. Even in Scandinavia you have that.
Yes.
Denmark, Norway, Sweden, if one thinks, what is the relationship of those three cultures within Scandinavia? What particular qualities do they have? How are they different from each other and so on? It's a very interesting threefoldness even there on a smaller scale.
Yes.
But Europe has it as a whole. Now Germany used to be in that position very strongly within Europe until 1945. And in 1945, Germany was then split.
Yep.
And Europe, instead of being a threefoldness, became a twofoldness, do you see? And this is the danger. This reduction of the threefoldness to the twofoldness. And this is one of my sort of themes which I go into quite a lot about in relation to the number 23, which has to do with this reduction of the three to the two, from Trinity to dualism, if you will.
Right. Interesting.
And again, this connects up with computers and all of that. You think of the computer consciousness, think, do, think, do, think, do, think, do, think, do. Exactly. Yes. Binary. There's no reflective heart.
Very good point.
There is no silent, quiet, reflective heart. Yeah. And that is the essence of humanity. The human pole and the will pole, what we have in our guts and what we have in our brains, there's